I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that.
Yeah, Andy,
just keep talking through it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the At Random podcast. I am your host, Alex, and joining me today is the wonderful burping Andy, who's now taking a drink, so I will throw it over to Ali. How are you doing?
Okay, I bit my lip when we had dinner, and it hurts.
You did your lip?
I bit my lip.
Yeah, well, that was fucking retarded. But, well, on the point of burping, Andy just got grilled before we started recording from Ali for burping into your ears and then continually talking. So how you doing, Andy? Any burps?
I'm good. Thank you very much. No, I'm not doing that.
I have to edit this tomorrow, okay? Don't you fucking start with me.
Do you have to edit this tomorrow?
Because he's going to be working tomorrow, so obviously I'll have to do the work.
Oh, shit. Cool.
Yeah, about time you pulled your weight because you don't contribute much on air.
Well, there we go again. Can we go through one episode of you not nagging your wife, please?
Hey, this is the one time I get to nag her all week.
I will put money on the fact that That's not true.
It's not true.
All right, you know what? I will start counting every time she nags me versus I nag her. We'll see who comes out. I think it'll be about a 10-1.
Well, if you ever did the things I actually ask you to do, I wouldn't nag you, would I?
You see, that's the weird thing. You're a female, right? You're a Huaman. And I genuinely think if he did all the things you asked him to, you wouldn't be happy like that.
I would find something like
you just find more shit to tell me to do. Like that's just how it works.
Good. Now you're keeping your manners. Do the dishes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Top tip here, just so you know, if you're a guy, always do basically the minimum to get by.
Yeah,
just do the bare minimum.
I say out of 10, do 4.
Yeah, 4. Around at least that. It's not terrible, but it's not good. Yeah. Like you can improve, but you could also be worse.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do 1, like then you're just...
It's enough to keep you afloat, but it doesn't make the boat sink.
Yeah, exactly. It's you know, like if you got stranded at sea on a boat and you could swim 4 out of 10, you could probably survive 12 hours in the water. Maybe you get saved.
If you're making her a BLT sandwich, sometimes forget the tomato, you know?
Yeah. And a 1 would be forgetting the bacon. So
no. That's reasons for divorce. Right there. That's reasons for divorce. You never forget the bacon.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So this was supposed to be Ali's episode, but she was like pretty busy all week. So I was like, okay, well, I'll do one. And then yesterday I saw a really interesting video from the infographic show on YouTube that actually inspired me to look at this.
Infographic show.
Yeah, it's like they do really cool like animation about like historical things or like really interesting facts.
Okay.
But they animate it and it's like they present it in a really cool way. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting.
Okay.
But I'm going to ask you before we begin. All right, well, let's start with Andy. When I say tunnel rat, what do you think of?
World War I guys in tunnels. That's what I think of when you say tunnel rat.
Okay, Ali?
Rats.
Yeah, and you'd say that. Well, Andy is kind of correct, but what I'm actually going to talk about is tunnel rats in the Vietnam War. Because I actually didn't realize how fucked up this shit was. Yeah.
World War I shit was already like, there is not a single tunnel rat, because that's what they were called, right? The military personnel that went into tunnels and shit like that. I don't think there's a single person that came out of World War I, not to talking about Vietnam and all that shit, that came out of there without PTSD. Like those guys, there was a sentence. They teach you how to get into the tunnels. They never teach you how to get out.
Yep, I'm going to touch on that a bit briefly later as well. So
there was something along those lines, right?
That up.
What was that channel again you called? I'm going to look it up.
The Infographic Show.
Look it up. That's where he gets all his episodes from.
Hey, no. Inspired by. Then I do more research, okay? But they do some really cool stuff, like about like really cool like torture, like medieval torture, and they animate it and stuff.
Very mature.
It does, but it's actually pretty interesting. So
Okay.
that inspired me. Hey, and then I watched a History Channel documentary on this Batman. Okay, I did my research.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
because you didn't
studied
clean
for
the
a whole
bathroom.
like 2 hours
I
to
just
bring you this.
spent my entire week watching Making a Murderer, and all I gotta say is, what's his name again? Avery.
I don't know.
Avery is innocent.
Oh yeah, Avery. Yeah, I know we gave up after like 7 episodes.
No,
Okay,
no, it gets so much better. It's so fucking horrible. But
I
go
can't
on.
remember why, but we stopped. But yeah, okay, so for those that don't know, though, Andy's already kind of touched on what they are.
Yeah.
But the reason I spoke about the tunnel rats specifically in the Vietnam War is because of like kind of the scope of it.
Yeah.
Like it was different to World War One. World War One, they were just digging trenches to fight each other.
Yep.
In the Vietnam War, the tunnels were literally like subterranean cities.
Mm-hmm.
So, just as a start off, so what is a tunnel rat? They were American, Australian, and New Zealand soldiers and South Vietnamese soldiers who performed the underground, like, sort of search and destroy missions during the Vietnam War. So, going
Brits
into
as
the
well,
tunnels.
right?
No, British didn't fight in Vietnam War.
Oh, fuck yeah. Okay.
The French, well, they lost and they kind of started it, but, you know.
Yeah, they're the
We'll skip
French. I
over that.
mean, yeah.
Yep. Similar terms to tunnel rats have also been used later by the Soviet army in the Soviet-Afghan war during the 80s and the Israelis in campaigns in the Middle East. It's called they're called tunnel rats because it's the unofficial name for volunteer combat engineers from Australia and the USA who cleared and destroyed the Viet Cong tunnels. Their motto was the Latin phrase non gratis anus redentum, which means not worth a rat's ass.
Oh, yeah.
That was
I
their
heard
motto.
the anus part.
Yeah, so that's their motto.
I didn't know that when you shag someone in the anus that you're actually speaking Latin.
It's a beautiful word.
I think anal has just become a little more civilized now.
I think so. Taking back to your roots, you know, going back to the good old days.
It's like my good friend Alfred Hancock and I.
Oh yes,
Yes,
boy,
we-
I love my
We used to do a lot of
non-gratis
anus
redentum.
in the war, didn't we?
Oh yes, old boy. Alice just has no fucking idea what's going on.
I just ask myself sometimes why I sometimes expose myself to this stupidity, but
She
go on.
exposes, says their elf.
One day she's gonna do an exposed video. Once she divorces me and you and I are done, you never get a job
That
anywhere
was
ever
one.
again.
Best-selling book within a week. New York Times.
Okay, so these tunnel networks began sort of being built during the early stages of the war with the French, which was the war for Vietnamese independence. Because after World War II, France took Vietnam back as a colony, as a French colony.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Vietnamese didn't like that very much.
Nope.
Wanted to be independent.
Mm-hmm.
So by the Viet Minh forces, which is led by the famous Ho Chi Minh, who now has a city named after him.
Yeah.
So they began building them. They were a national independence group formed by Ho Chi Minh in 1941. They were like the first organized anti-French and anti-Japanese nationalist organization in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, originally, because they fought the Japanese, the US backed them. Because, you know, during and after World War II. Obviously, the Americans kind of had a thing against Japan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually backed them. But then when they started leaning more communist with the backing of China and Russia, then the US were like, no, fuck you. So then they split Vietnam into North and South. The North were the communists, the South were like wanted to be independent and free.
Yeah.
And then the Americans decided to invade.
Stupid mistake.
Yeah, it kind of was. So this tunnel network was like originally built during the 40s and 50s and early 60s, but then the Viet Cong eventually took over, which is sort of like the communists in the north, took over and like improved it and expanded upon it during the Vietnam War with the Americans.
Yeah.
The tunnel systems were so elaborate that they included hospitals, training areas, headquarters, and barracks. Like there were huge rooms with like 20 or 40 soldiers sleeping in barracks.
Yeah.
They had, you know, little underground field hospitals, munitions supplies, everything. It wasn't just like a small tunnel. You know, they had like big ass caves and openings.
Sounds like a dream so far.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you love to go down and visit those?
Yeah. course. Shag one of the sexy nurses in the hospice.
Do you have to say shag?
Shagadelic,
baby, yeah.
I hate that word.
Very shagadelic,
Just so
baby. Do I make you
nasty.
horny?
You know what? I bet you if you went up to a Viet Cong and asked to shag them, they would say yes.
Oh yeah, they know exactly what you're talking about. They would say,
No. Don't.
Come on.
Don't. No. Remember the part where I said that I'm editing the episode? It's not going to make it anyway.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying,
I'm not
just
gonna
do
do
your
an
thing,
accent.
Andy. Just do it. I'll just edit you out.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna be a good boy.
Okay, well, now that Mummy over there has thrown down the hammer and the gauntlet and said, no more, we'll keep going then. Tunnel rats in Vietnam was actually is traced back to the 3 Field Force, which is an Australian combat engineer platoon.
Yeah.
They have a strong argument in case of being the first in Vietnam, the first Allied troops to enter the tunnels between 65 and 66.
To make the tunnels.
To enter them.
So they were already in place then?
Oh yeah, these tunnels have been in place for like 20, 30 years. The Viet Cong just made them bigger and more elaborate and just kept building on them.
Okay.
Because they originally used to fight the
But
French during
were
the
they
40s
occupied
and 50s.
when the Australians got in? They weren't occupied.
Oh no, they were. The Viet Cong were settling in. Yep. But they were just the first Allied. I think when I was looking into it, it took them a while to work out that there was even underground tunnels.
Jesus.
So that's how the Viet Cong used to like do a lot of their like killings, because you know they would cover them up in the dense forest, and if you didn't know where they're there, you would never
Wasn't
find
it
them.
that elaborate that even after the World War, even after that war ended, people would still believe they're at war because nobody was able to reach them?
Yeah, because I mean these tunnels spread all through the mountains into Laos, which shares a border with them, and I think even some in Cambodia. Could be wrong, but like they were.
Jesus.
I think in total, the total length is estimated at its peak was 2,500 kilometers of tunnel network, which is
Jesus.
I think 1,500 miles.
Yeah.
And they weren't, big tunnels. They were on average 80 centimeters tall by 60 centimeters wide.
That's
That's,
half a me.
Yeah, that is literally half a normal sized human being tall.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so 31.5 inches tall for the Americans and 23.6 inches wide.
Just use the metric system, please.
Yeah, I know. There's still today, actually, there's 121 kilometers or 75 miles is actually preserved in the Cu Chi Tunnel Network, which was where the big... Yeah, Cu Chi, I know, I had a chuckle about that too. But that is what it's called. They preserved it now. It's a war memorial, but you can actually go it's for tourism now as well. You can actually go in, and one of my friends went there. He was like,
Alex, stop laughing. You cannot laugh that long for Coochie. Anus didn't linger that long.
It's a Coochie tunnel.
he climbed in head first into the coochie. He went back where he was coming from. He was underbaked.
I'm sorry.
But no, he's
Let me go to Coochie Tunnel.
Yes, there it is. That's what I wanted.
Couldn't hold it back anymore.
It's okay.
But yeah, anyway, so he's not a big guy. He's like an average sized man, and he was like, holy shit, like I could barely fit through some of these tunnels. But and one of my other friends, he is a bit tall, but not very tall. But he's like, he got claustrophobia and then was like, no, I'm not going anymore. Because his shoulders were rubbing on the walls and felt super claustrophobic. So I mean, you can imagine that with guys are shooting at you, and you're like in there with a fucking gun, like and a flashlight.
Yeah.
But
this is back in a time where a gun would jam easily. Like in those circumstances, like regular upkeep of the gun, I bet you that the Viet Cong would maintain their guns at enormously amount better than any other troop out there. As far as jamming goes, you'd have to go man to man in those tunnels as well.
Oh yeah, and like,
can you imagine big fucking American or Australian guy just working his way through the tunnels, and in comes this tiny little Vietnamese.
She's still.
Are you still on the Coochie Tunnel
networks?
Are you still?
You are so racist. That is a city in
It's
fucking
a
Vietnam.
It's a shitty coochie tunnel.
Oh no! Oh my god! No, don't
sorry.
shit in the coochie.
No shit in the coochie, please.
That's how you get infections, people.
I'm sorry, it was the jamming of the cushion.
He said jamming of the guns, not the cooch. What are you talking about?
Jamming in the tunnel.
So-
Jamming in the
so-
tunnel, he said.
No, but serious
it's a
question.
good
How
point.
many people could you fit inside a coochie at one time, Alex? Would
Well,
you
in the
say
barracks, sleeping in the uterus, they had up to 20 or 30 at a time.
up to
in some
20 or 30?
tunnels, in some
Oh,
in
Jesus.
some bigger chambers.
So, and would you say that sometimes there was an entire gang in the coochie?
Yes, some would
Yes.
say they may have even entered and exited like a train.
No, Jesus Christ!
One
And
after the
sometimes
other.
I can clearly imagine grenades going off in there as well. So,
Oh, there
you
were
know,
big, hard, loud
sometimes
bangs.
there would have been gangbangs in the coochie then.
Okay, it's out of me
Okay,
now.
Is it
Okay,
gone?
cool.
Is
We
it
got it
good
out
now?
already.
Is it out?
I'm
Good.
sorry for
Yeah.
that 2 minutes of bullshit you had to listen to, ladies and gentlemen. But Andy, you do make a good point, because also above ground, it's a dense jungle and rice paddy fields. So, you know, their guns are getting wet, they're getting like humidity, they're
Like
jamming.
humidity and rice
Yeah.
fields
Oh, yeah,
above the
yeah.
coochie then, yeah.
And we're going to get a bit more into how fucked these tunnels were very shortly.
How fucked were the coochie tunnels? It's not gonna go now. I mean, we've started this. It's not gonna go away now. I think this is the first episode where we've heard Ali laugh this much.
I don't think she's that. I've never heard her
Whatever
laugh this
we
much in my
heard in the
life.
last 3 to 4 minutes is usually what she gives us in an entire show.
Or like a month of shows. Okay, so she's going to love this bit too, because believe it or not only were these, you know, you would think, how could they breathe in the coochie tunnels, right? They had an incredibly sophisticated ventilation system.
Inside the coochie.
Yep.
Okay.
So basically, they literally made a subterranean city. They had tunnels going everywhere, like bigger chambers where people were sleeping. Field hospitals, generals would meet and like share intel. So the Americans would want, and Australian soldiers would go down, try and find intel and blow up munitions.
And did
That was
they
kind of
run
their
like
main job.
pipelines of water down there as well?
I assume that maybe just ran water skins down. I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but they had
That's weird.
it wasn't just like a tunnel. They had actual
It was an actual
facilities.
system. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a full
Yeah.
system. The Australians were sort of the first known to have entered. Then the Americans came. Tunnel rats, as you can imagine, they're very small rats. So obviously, they're not bringing big weapons with them, right?
Yeah, no.
They were usually just issued a standard M1911 pistol or an M19 1917 revolver, a bayonet, flashlight, and explosives, usually like hand grenades or C4.
Yeah.
Because their job was to blow up other ammunitions down there and blow up the tunnels in many
Yeah.
cases as well. But many of the tunnel rats actually grew to hate these weapons because they're 45 caliber weapons. So the muzzle flash was so high velocity that it would temporarily deafen them. And obviously because you're in such a small environment.
Yeah.
So they actually opted to use smaller weapons where possible, like 38 caliber revolvers, and I think they
Shit.
really loved 22 caliber, but
Yeah.
other platoons in the military needed them, so like they were kind of like, well, sorry, we can't give it to you.
Yeah, but a 22 against a well-armed person is
With an
gonna
M16
do like
shooting back
that's-
at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
So as you
when
can-
you talk to an American about a 22, they're gonna laugh at you.
Mm-hmm. But these guys actually wanted it because otherwise they were
Yeah.
like getting deafened anytime they were shooting.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, like, these tunnels are so small, they're like climbing on sort of like their stomach, almost like crawling.
Yeah.
Basically, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. Like, they don't know what's coming at them.
Yeah. No.
And the other guy at the other end's probably in a bigger chamber, sitting there with an M16, just laughing at the white cunt walking towards him, like
with
cannon
a
fodder.
flashlight in his
Yeah,
hand.
with a flashlight and
Yeah.
a fucking 22 caliber pistol. But they also, some of them use sawn-off shotguns though. So imagine in close quarters, it can do some
Jesus.
damage. Okay, this is a bit that really caught my interest. If I ask you what sort of traps do you think they laid in these tunnels, just try to name a couple, both of you, if you think of any.
Immediately when I think Viet Cong, I think spikes.
Yep,
Like
definitely
horrible
one.
fucking gigantic bamboo spikes.
Yep. I mean, spikes is absolutely one.
Yeah. I know they're big on spikes. Like, I can imagine different types of spike traps, like coming out of the wall and falling through the floor and all that shit, and falling through the floor where you actually hit the floor, and because of your own weight, then 2 spikes would jab you in the leg. Like, I've seen all that. Yep. Like, other than that, like, I don't know.
Would they build other tunnels that would drop into holes and stuff? Like
kind
maybe
of a lot of it to sort of do what Andy said, to fall into, they call them punji spike traps.
Yeah.
Which is sharpened bamboo that then they often smeared human feces on.
Oh, yeah.
So that if it impaled you and you lived from the impalement, you would get heavy infections.
Yeah.
They were very elaborate. So this is only one of the traps. Well, let's get into it. They would often build like false floors in the tunnels that would drop you 2 to 3 meters and just have a series of bamboo, which is under like 10 feet or whatever in America's, and just have bamboo shit covered, human poo covered bamboo super sharp spikes.
Yeah, that's what I thought, like with the sort of either tunnels that would lead you in the wrong direction and into a drop.
They had other ones though. It weren't just a drop on the floor. They would have ones that have like a flexible material in the middle that you couldn't like cover really well. And then from the side, bamboo spikes would shoot out and like smack you in the head, in the arms, in the legs, like in the side. They had very elaborate traps, like bamboo spike traps. But not only that, they also had this thing that they liked to do where they would get pit vipers. So a pit viper is an Asian cousin to a rattlesnake.
Okay.
They would get them by their tail, suspend them on little, like, you go along the tunnel, then the roof would be slightly higher in a section and then drop back down again. And they would put the snake in the higher section, so when you walk past and put your head, the snake would bite them.
Oh, fuck.
And inject them with venom. Ooh. They also had scorpions, rats, bats, other types of snakes, and ants were actually a big problem as well.
Yeah.
Like big fucking ant, because they just bite them and like crawl all over them.
Oh, God.
Ants are not fucking, it's like, ooh, no, you don't want to fuck with ants.
Rarely, but they did also use toxic gas to just gas them out of the tunnels.
Yeah.
The tunnel rats had the option to wear gas masks, but they found that obviously the risk was so low of actually being gassed, and it made it a lot harder to see in here in the dark space. So they didn't want to wear them. And plus, obviously, it makes it bulkier, harder to move.
Yeah.
They also quite often flooded tunnels. They had like special tunnels that if they went in there, they let them get halfway down, and then they would just flood them with water and drown them.
Jesus.
Yep. Or they would just bomb the tunnel and make it collapse on them.
And just
collapse the tunnel on top of the US.
Man.
Yeah, on top of these tunnel
fun
rats.
stuff, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can see where these guys are pretty fucked in the head now.
Yeah.
There's an estimation that in 1967, not just for tunnel rats, but soldiers in general in the US military, that up to 11% of all deaths were directly related to punji traps, the spikes. Because they laid them in the forest floor, they put them in the tunnels.
Yeah.
They were everywhere. So up to 11% of all the deaths in 1967.
They were a big fucking problem.
Oh, yeah.
And because they're built with everything nature, it's just like no chance of detecting it.
No, exactly. And they covered them so well.
Yeah, even the sharpest eye wasn't able to find these traps and avoid them. It's fucking incredible.
Yeah, and then it was this sort of stuff. I was like, damn, like I knew about some of it. I was like, but holy shit, like these guys were nuts. Because a lot of these tunnel rats, I didn't say before, but they were actually volunteers. They weren't just like told to do it. They were like, they wanted the macho man, like, I ain't gonna do it, bro.
That's the thing, though. Their traps weren't actually meant to kill. They were meant to maim. Basically, because they wanted people to stay away. They wanted to make people scared, and succeeded in it immensely.
Oh yeah, I mean they basically won the war because of these tunnels and traps.
There is not a single country you hear now that said like the Vietnam War was okay at any form. Like you sometimes hear stories of World War II, like it was bad, but blah, 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 blah. You won't hear that about the Vietnam War.
No.
Ever.
No.
Like that shit was fucked.
Yeah, I don't know. Like also, yeah, sure, it's horrible. Like if you see it out of perspective, like it's brutal, the shit they did, but also in the first sense, why did the Americans have to get in there in the first place?
To be fair, I don't blame the soldiers because they had conscription. So
yeah, but the
like,
soldiers,
they didn't
it's
even
never
have a
the
fucking
soldiers'
choice.
fault, but they're still always the
true.
one that has to pay. But also the shit that the soldiers did to the Vietnamese people, it's...
We're getting there. We'll touch on that a
Yeah.
bit later too. But actually, just to quickly touch on what you said, Andy, as well about not trying to kill. The other reason I watched a good explanation earlier today is the other thing that when someone is injured, obviously their comrades will try to save them, right?
Yeah.
And that usually, so if one person's injured, it takes two other guys because you got to take turns carrying, and one has to carry the shit, one has to carry the person. So all of a sudden, you're taking out three people at a time. If you injure one, if you kill them, they're just gonna obviously leave them move along.
Yeah.
So it's actually better for them to tactically to injure and not kill, and that's a lot of the reason why they did it. You mentioned as well, Andy, about imagining a big, bustly American guy trying to climb in the coochie.
Yeah.
I dropped the coochie because I realized what we actually were talking about, and it's quite horrid to laugh like that.
It is. So, but they were actually almost exclusively had to be under 165 centimeters or 5'5" because
I know.
you physically could not fit in the tunnel otherwise.
It's like the guys that they used for our American listeners out there. The guys that they used were Captain America pre-Vita race. Like before he got in the machine, that's the sort of guys they would use. Small and skinny.
Actually, they did a good study that I was reading about, and almost all of the U.S. tunnel rats were of European or Hispanic descent, usually Mexican or like Italian, because they're like quite short people.
Yeah.
So they were almost entirely from those sort of backgrounds. Since the end of the Vietnam War, tunnel rats have suffered like a disproportionately high percentage from Agent Orange related injuries and diseases.
Agent Orange, what is that?
I'm going to explain that in a second. As a result of being exposed to contaminated soil and Agent Orange that leached through the topsoil in the tunnels, so they were basically... Agent Orange was the herbicide that they carpet bombed from their planes to get rid of all the forest. The Americans went and literally from planes dropped this like pesticide basically to kill all the trees so that they could find all the tunnels so that Viet Cong had nowhere to hide. And they literally turned jungle into like almost like a fucking like Mars. Like there was like no trees, nothing.
Fuck.
But as it turns out, Agent Orange is incredibly bad for humans.
Okay.
So these guys, they're crawling around in the dirt, on the ground, in like water, in tunnels and shit. So they got like super high exposure to this chemical. Literally, like basically they turned a jungle into a desert. Is basically what they tried to do. Like just raise
With poison.
With poison, with herbicide. And they succeeded.
And what are the side effects to a human by Agent Orange?
Here we go. Very soon after like returning back, a lot of soldiers noticed that their wives were having miscarriages.
Wow.
Like incredibly high rates of miscarriage. Not just, one or two guys, but a lot of them. Or their children were born with severe birth defects.
Yeah.
They had much higher risks of getting leukemia and Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Jesus.
And various other types of cancer.
Wow.
Any children, like so Vietnamese children that were, growing up at the time, who were exposed to it, often ended up having much higher rates of things like cleft palate, like cleft lip, mental disabilities, hernias, and even grew extra fingers and toes.
Yeah.
And also a whole range of genetic diseases. So basically there's been like a couple generations in Vietnam and of Vietnam War soldiers whose kids have had like deformities and things as a direct result of this.
Do you think with Generation X or whatever the now generation is that this is the final stage of that exposure that is now getting released from it?
Hope.
Yeah.
We can only hope it improves from here.
I mean, after the whole Tide thing, one could only hope that it now goes.
True. This is how lovely the US military is. So after the war, soldiers who suffered from these illnesses asked for compensation starting in 1977 from the military.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, you fucked me up from life. Because they told them, like, no, there's nothing to worry about. It's totally safe. We've tested it. No problem. Don't worry about it. You're all good. So in order to get compensation, there were a few criteria you have to meet.
Yeah.
You either have to be able to prove that your symptoms began during or within 12 months of being discharged from the Vietnam War, like from the military, or you must have served on or near the perimeter of US military bases in Thailand, which was where they were storing this during the Vietnam War, or you must have been a crew member on the C-123 planes or associated projects to test, dispose of, or store the herbicides on US soil.
So the tunnel rats weren't even...
Oh, it's much more fucked up. So by 1993, out of 39,419 soldiers that filed a disability payout claim, 486 got approved.
486
out of almost 40,000.
Well, thank you, Uncle Sam.
Yep. Ruined these guys' lives, their children's lives.
Out of
wives.
how many?
39,419, only 486 people.
Jesus
Less than 500 people.
Christ.
Yep. And that was by 93. Maybe they've decided not to be cheap cunts now and pay a few more. I don't know, but
Yeah. Because most of those people did not kill themselves.
well, no, they were literally carpet bombed or chucked down in a tunnel.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking after the war, the ones that didn't die in the war, a lot of them, because that's another thing. The Americans don't take care of the bloody fucking veterans.
No.
They expose them to so much shit.
Yeah.
That it's fucking ridiculous, especially the Vietnam War. Well, we've heard some of the explanation of the shit that they had to go through, and then coming back home, can't get a job, can't get anything, can't get disability. Nothing. So fuck you, America. I'm sorry. I'm so pissed at that bloody country.
But I mean, if you ever wonder why that weird Vietnam vet is a little bit screw loose, maybe now you understand a bit more why.
Yeah.
So in a poll in November 2004, I still don't get this. Only 79% of people thought that the US chemical companies responsible for actually making Agent Orange should compensate the affected soldiers.
What? I mean,
wouldn't you just be it should be 100% of people yeah.
Yes.
But it gets even more fucked up.
That's taking a shit and then somebody else picks it up.
Yep.
And just smears it all over somebody else's face, and then that guy that got the shit on his face says it's the guy that pooped that needs to.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well, you know what country we're talking about. I'm sorry, they're fucked.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry,
I know
you listening in, but your country's fucked.
But with that high of percentage of people that, because we're not talking low numbers that have to be paid out as well. With that high of a people people that need help, is it weird that then they don't have free healthcare? I mean,
yeah, I know, right?
If Belgium had to do the same for its people right here, I think we'd pretty much be fucked. It's like free healthcare isn't a fail-proof system, I guess.
Nope.
Something tells me that they could use it somehow.
Yeah, I mean, instead of that discount when they go to Wendy's to buy a fucking burger, maybe give the guy and his family,
give him help. A little extra money to go buy that burger himself.
Yeah, and to look after his now deformed child or grandchildren that have severe disabilities because of a chemical you told him was safe.
Yeah. Timmy.
But it gets more sad. How many percent of people do you think said the Vietnamese victims should be compensated?
How many what?
Percent of people in the same poll that voted 79% for US soldiers. How many voted that Vietnamese people should be compensated? It's their country. They were
15.
It's not that.
Okay.
Not that much. Yeah, I'd say 20-30%.
Okay, you have less faith than I thought. It's 51.
Okay.
That's literally 1 in 2 people was we invaded their country, we dropped chemicals on them. 1 and 2 of them were like, nah, fuck them.
They shouldn't have built those tunnels. I mean, at the end of the day. They shouldn't have been
communists, bro. And, just wanted their own country instead of being under French rule. No one wants to be ruled by the... Not even the French want to be French, man. That's why they have civil wars every other, 50 years. Right, so we discussed, a bit earlier on about the size of the tunnels. And they were designed this small for a reason, and that was so that non-Vietnamese people couldn't enter them. Mm-hmm. That was literally, they were designed specifically that way, so that Western, we're a bit larger people.
Yeah.
Than the dainty Vietnamese, and they made them that small on purpose? Okay, here's a question for you. Everyone have a guess. Number one, how many tunnel rats do you think there was throughout the whole war?
15. Next question.
How many died and how many were wounded?
2 and 5.
Okay.
I don't know, man. Like,
just have a stab. All right,
40,
guess.
How many tunnel
40,000?
rats?
Yeah, how many tunnel rats in total do you think?
Yeah, I would say around
40,000.
40, 50. 40, 50,000.
1,000 or people or
1,000.
tunnel rats?
No,
okay.
okay, now you... Let's say 20. Okay,
I'm gonna
20.
20,000.
20,000.
That's a lot lower.
I'm gonna go 40.
40. Okay.
Okay, 5,000.
5,000. There was 700 approximately.
Oh.
700 throughout the whole war from Australia, New Zealand, US.
I'm sticking to 40,000. I'm sorry.
All right, how many were killed? Like known to. Let's say
How many
known
did you
to.
say there were?
700.
25,000.
500.
No,
No, not that high.
Okay, 250.
36 died, or are known to have died. That's the
Yeah.
other thing. No,
yeah.
but 200 were also wounded, often maimed for life. And that accounts for 1 in 3 of them either died or were severely maimed for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Of these tunnel rats.
By
And how many killed themselves when they came back?
Stab wound.
Do you have a statistic on that?
I don't, but I was watching an interview with a guy who was, going on about. This would have been. It was an older documentary. I'd say this is probably like late 90s. This interview, so it was
Okay.
20, 25 years later, right? And he said that he often, still to that day, would have dreams of tunnels collapsing on him and
Yeah.
being buried alive.
Jesus.
Like regularly, every
yeah.
week, every other.
I didn't even think of that. That's a horrible thing to go through. The constant fear, not only of traps and shit like that, but the constant fear of knowing that whatever is built around you could collapse at any moment. So it's not even you crawl in and you're okay until you encounter somebody or you encounter a trap. It's actually a sort of 24-hour fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, claustrophobia is fucking horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a video game where you're like, I'm cool. I just go down this tunnel and gonna, shoot some stuff.
Yeah.
Are you claustrophobic?
I?
Yeah, I'm asking.
I've not really. No.
Have you ever felt the feeling, like claustrophobic feelings?
Nah, but the only thing that I do feel is I feed off of other people's fear. So I'm good on my own, but when there's somebody freaking out next to me, I'll get really pissed at that person, totally not keeping in account what they might feel or something like that. I will genuinely get angry at a person for freaking out because it bothers, like it
makes
gets
you
so in
uncomfortable.
my
Yeah. I remember when we were in Australia 2 years ago, we went to these tunnels in Naracoorte.
Yep.
And we went on a small little guide tour. Like, it was only just me, my sister, and Alex.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, okay, I'll make it a little bit special for you. So we went into this, like, it wasn't even a full-on tunnel system, but it was like...
Yeah.
It's a cave network. It's
In
for
a
bats.
yeah.
They have a lot of bats.
Yeah.
But we went
Huge
into a part
cave
that
network.
isn't part of the actual tour because she thought there were going to be more people, but it was only the three of us. So she's like, I'll take you see some special things.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a really nice Asian lady, really good tour guide.
Yeah.
But she took us, like, we were going to see some, like, tunnel graffiti because you make them with, like...
Oh, yeah. I remember this.
with candles, like from the smoke of if you put them up to the rocks. But anyway, and I just remember because we have to go under this massive thing, like boulder, and walk through a little tunnel, like almost. And I just I've never felt claustrophobic until that moment because, like, you have this massive boulder on top of you, and I was like, and I think I misstepped also, and I problems with my knees, so kind of crouching down trying to walk, it was like I went in a full in panic.
They were
and
probably 2 or 3 times the size of these little tunnels too.
Yeah.
Like, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you right
Christ.
now, I literally probably couldn't even fit in these tunnels. So
Yeah.
I think my shoulders alone are too broad to go like through them.
Yeah.
But there was also a guy. Actually, it's interesting. You said that other people, when they're scared, it pisses like you get more scared or like freak out.
I don't freak out. I get genuinely. I don't know what it is. I've been in stuck in an elevator with this lady that I didn't know, and she started freaking out and breathing heavy, and so full on panic attack. Normally, I'm a pretty caring guy. You know, if somebody's in pain or whatever, you know, I'll be the first one to sit there and try to help them out. At that moment, the freaking out was so unlogical to me because like everything has to have a certain logic with me, and the fact that I was standing there knowing it'll be okay in 20 minutes to half an hour to 45 minutes, whatever time you're gonna be there. It's an elevator. There's nothing gonna happen. You cannot be stuck safer than somewhere than in a fucking elevator. So that was my reasoning. Here, lo and behold, 45-year-old lady starts freaking out, breathing heavy, all that shit. I genuinely screamed at her. I genuinely screamed at the scared old lady. And to this day, not sorry a single bit.
I'm more pissed at you, not for screaming at her, but calling a 45-year-old old lady.
Well, they are old.
Very
The second you get over like 40, you're done.
Yeah, that's like 1 foot in a grave. It's just, get the shovel, start digging yourself.
See you there next year, Andy.
But, it's like that piece, you get that piece of meat in your fridge that's a couple days past the date, and you sort of give it a bit of a sniff. You're like, is it still good? Like, you're at that age. You're like, you're probably still good, but you might...
It's like the bread. Close. It's like the bread you've known gone bad. What you're wondering, can I still toast it? You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's only one piece.
It's something like that.
It's all good.
Nah, but basically, I just screamed at her till she started seeing sense. And the weird thing was, it did help in the end. Like, she shut the fuck up, and she stopped breathing heavily. Probably because she was more scared of me than the situation.
Yeah, then she went home and told her husband about that fucked up dude in the elevator.
Like the Vietnamese were scared of tunnels for the rest of this life, this woman cannot hear the name Andy ever again, or she just starts freaking out. But no, she did calm down after a while, because after she stopped freaking out because I got pissed at her, I had a chance to rationalize with her what was going to happen, and that solved the issue for her. But it didn't. She probably still felt somewhat scared, but like, I don't know. I cannot deal with unrational behavior in stressful situations. It doesn't compute with me.
No, to summarize that, Andy's just a dick. Okay.
No, I didn't. Look,
if you're
summarize
a tunnel rat, put Andy first.
Little Britain, tappity tap tap. Computer says no. That's it. That's the way I work.
But if you're a tunnel rat and you're with Andy, put him in the front.
Yeah, you'll kill him faster.
Probably.
Let him drop down the punch tunnel.
But they interviewed these guys, right? And they both somehow survived together, and they were like a duo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they were just going on about how
Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, but they made these like really it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Like how they sometimes had to go solo and sometimes they had to go together, right? And they were like, every time when you were solo, it was way more scary. Like,
oh yeah, of course.
But not because I'm by myself or anything. He's like, I know what to do. He's like, but at least I know that with this guy here or whatever, like, it just made me naturally feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Even though what I'm doing is fucked up.
Yeah. I get that. It's like I think that's something that every gamer in the world can understand.
Yeah, when you're with your bro. I think
that any person in the world can understand, because the second you start, like, even just out walking, when you start thinking, you overanalyze everything because you only have yourself.
Yeah.
And like, you're walking down a dark alley. It's like, I'm going to get fucking robbed. I'm going to get mugged. I'm going to get raped. I'm going to get like everything. But if you're walking with a friend, you're not thinking of that because you're talking about other things, and it distracts your mind. Your mind will always start wandering away when you're by yourself, because you only have yourself to rationalize with, and you will almost always picture the worst scenario.
One thing, though, that's interesting about this is usually when there's two of them, it's actually more dangerous for them, because obviously if you need to escape and there's a guy behind you that doesn't know what the fuck's happening.
You make more noise as well.
Yeah, and you got a guy in the way if you need to run away. You're like, turn the fuck around, dickhead, that's shooting at me. What the fuck are you doing?
And how annoying must it be to be in that tunnel with two, and like being very scared when you're alone, and like extreme scared when you're alone. And then when you have somebody else that makes you feel comfortable, you have to keep going like, fucking shut up. Shut up.
They told another, like, man, this would have freaked the fuck out. They got lost going when they go, because normally they'd go in and they sort of know, like, you know, go so far and then like stop. You know, and then go back. And what they would do is they'd go to the end, they'd find what they were after, and then they would lay C4 charges and then blow up the tunnel network.
Of course.
Yeah. So what they had to do usually is they go down once, kill all the Viet Cong, whatever, find any intel, then go up again.
Mm-hmm.
Then they would go take a spool out, go back in, lay a whole bunch of C4, and then come back out and blow it up. But anyway, they were telling a story where they got lost for them it felt, you know, like 2 days. It was probably like, they think it was about 4 hours.
Yeah.
But they got like lost and they one of them
stumbled. And it was like 4 days later than when they came out?
No, it was only like 3 or 4 hours because normally they go like an hour or two at a time. Like, that's it. But anyway, they stumbled in the middle of the dark into a barrack full of sleeping Viet Cong. And just guy shined his light and saw a guy reaching for his gun and he just went, fuck. And they both just started shooting and somehow they both survived and got out.
Holy shit.
Yep. Like literally went into a barrack. There's about 12
like
guys.
That, man. It's stories like that are so fucking incredible, dude.
Yep.
Do you know about the greatest beer run in history?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a show about that because it's the greatest story about the Vietnam War ever to be told. This is basically a guy that promised his buddies that had to go to the Vietnam War, hey, you know what? When you're all drafted, I'll bring you all a fucking beer. This guy was in the United States, right? This was all guys that frequented a pub in the United States. And what happened is this guy took a 6-pack and went over to Vietnam to give everybody beer.
So just like signed up just to give him
his
a beer.
buddies, by the way, not fucking, you know. Jesus. He was on a mission to get his buddies beer. Genuine fucking stories, and it's a book. It's called The Greatest Beer Run of All Time, and it's the most amazing story ever. Yeah. You can even find, the guy's dead now. You can even find some interviews with a guy on YouTube. But it's stories like that just there's some shit out there, man, that people have gone through. Can you imagine just picking up your flashlight?
Oh, he's there to do a job on the Vietcong.
No, can you imagine just picking up your flashlight, shining it in a room, and just finding how many? Do you have an idea? I think it was about how 12. Many people were? And
he guesstimates 8 to 12. And he just saw a couple of them just reaching for their guns, and he was like, "Fuck!" And they just shoot and ran, like, you know, turned around and fucked off as quick, and they got out somehow.
Fucking hell!
One of them did, though. Unfortunately, I think on the way, just near the end, he stepped on a bouncing Betty, which is a landmine. Called bouncing Betties because they have a spring and they shoot up in the air, and then, you know, like, oh, I'm fucked.
Oh yeah,
blew off. I think like completely one of his legs, but yeah, he's alive. Unlike a lot of them. So as he said, it could be worse. He could be dead. Yeah. He could have died then.
Well, it's actually a good way to look at it. I mean,
like as he said, at least I got a chance to have a family and stuff. He's like, you know, a lot of my buddies never came home. They never got to see their wife again.
Absolutely true.
So
absolutely true.
But that's
another aspect of it, man. The brotherhood you create there. When you're in those sort of situations together, I don't think you can ever go through life without that person.
Yep.
There's something about going.
Today.
I can only imagine, because when you go through hell and through literal shits with somebody, I think that creates a bond stronger than anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they probably saved your life 100 times. You saved theirs. Yeah. You were literally dependent on each other in this tiny tunnel to survive.
It's incredible, man, what these people had to go through, these tunnel rats. I mean, Jesus Christ.
That's what I got on them. But it just a little, like, I watched that video from the infographic show and I was like, damn, like, I knew some of this stuff, but this is like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, pit hanging snakes off the fucking ceiling.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? I never knew that.
That's just a good interior design idea. I mean,
it really is. Put some of the world's most venomous snakes on your ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget all the horrible shit that the Americans actually did to the Vietnamese people.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about. The Americans were there justified, and they didn't do anything wrong.
According to some Americans, they also won. Say that with a straight face.
I think I have an idea of which Americans we're talking about here.
Yeah.
One thing that I know that the Americans did, obviously, like they blew napalm and all the other horrible things that they did to Vietnamese. But one of their tactics to scare the people in the jungles and the tunnels and stuff, they would have loudspeakers with a Vietnamese
Justin Bieber music.
no, with a guy like talking Vietnamese, being a spirit, like a ghost, basically saying what a horrible life he's doing, like encourage them to drop their weapons. And
the Vietnamese did the same to the Americans.
Yeah. But the obviously the Vietnamese are very.
But they couldn't get an American actor to do this.
G.I. Joe.
And so it sounded a little bit like. If I were you, I would drop the weapon. I don't know. It may be a good idea to maybe drop the weapon. I don't know. Maybe it's a good idea, though.
Hey, hats off to the Viet Cong, though. Like, they wrecked the West.
Yeah.
But the Americans played Vietnamese.
Like, it was a spirit trapped, because the thing is, like, obviously the Vietnamese, they believe a lot of like spirituality, and like they're very
They're Buddhist, or some of them are Buddhist anyway.
They're very fearful of like ghosts.
Yeah, spirits.
So wait, hold on. So the Viet Cong was using shit-stained spikes through the skull tactics.
Yeah.
Meantime, the Americans were using spooky dooky ghosties.
Well, and they also dropped more bombs than they dropped in all of World War II.
Well,
but
true.
You know, we can.
But still.
No, but I'll send you the clip of the audio they used.
Yeah. Do you know what they also did?
Quite
actually,
horrid.
That was really interesting. I didn't know.
I don't understand it, but it sounds horrible. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, send it to me. Put it on the introduce yourself on the @random chat and the Discord server.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you wanna listen to that audio too, why don't you join us on the Discord server? You'll be able to find a link in the description down below.
Do it, or I will send napalm on your ass. No, but what the Americans did actually to even start the Vietnam War or justify their invasion is they started going. And the CIA spread a whole bunch of rumors in I think it was Saigon up in the north. I think it's Saigon, which is now Ho Chi Minh City or whatever. That basically saying the Americans were going to nuke there, because at that point it was like North and South Vietnam, and the North was the communists. So the CIA started putting propaganda that like that Ho Chi Minh, like the leader or whatever at the time, like they're going to lead you to the Americans nuking you, so you need to flee to the South. So that they could use it as justification to start a war. Because then they just said, the North's invading the South. Look.
Oh, God. Seriously? And they were just like refugees and shit like that?
Yeah, well, they were just people that fell for the propaganda.
Horrible. Oh, God.
Of the CIA. And that's my last stick. But yeah. So that's what we have. Hope you learned something, found interesting. Look into a bit more if you're interested. Play Battlefield Vietnam. Great game. Old, but brilliant. Very brilliant. Yeah, that's the life of a tunnel rat. Gotta say, kind of glad it wasn't me.
Yeah, well,
or someone that I know. All right, Batman. Should we sign off? I think we're a good length in. We can maybe a couple minutes shorter than normal. It's probably a good thing.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Like, it's horrible, but it's still important. We have to know our history, people. You didn't win the Vietnam War. Just so you know.
Didn't win is like saying like that. I don't know.
There was something to win in the first place.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they can drag him in front of court and try to fucking win it anyway.
It's like saying Kanye West lost his election seat. Okay, he didn't just lose.
Yeah. But
did
anyway,
he actually run a campaign?
Yes.
Yes.
He did?
Yes, and he got like less than 1% of the vote or something. So like, the Americans losing
That's
Vietnam
the
is like saying
best thing
Kanye
ever.
lost the election.
Oh
in his
God,
seat.
that's awesome! I didn't know he was actually running.
Yeah, no, he did.
Yeah.
Like I knew
He
the
did.
rumors. Oh, he was talking to Trump about fucking, running
Yep.
for president. I didn't know he was actually mad enough to fucking do it.
Yeah, no, he did. But I don't want to talk about that. That's enough. Sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up. I'm sick of hearing about that shit.
Yeah.
All right, Ali. Well, hope you people learned something, Ali. Where can they find us on Instagram?
Oh, Instagram is @random.podcast. So at.random.podcast.
And on Twitter, we are @_randompod. So give us a like and a follow over there and retweet all our shit, or I will shit in a stick and make you fall into a pit.
All right. And what is this week's question that we want to ask? What would be your ultimate booby trap? Oh,
That's a good one. I like that one.
Hashtag ultimate booby trap. Put it on Twitter now.
Do it. Even better if you can like illustrate how it works, like the mechanics of it.
With a drawing. And it has to be shit stained, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And on that
There you
lovely
go.
note, hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next time. I'm Alex. That's Andy.
Ellie.
Andy's having a stroke, so cool.
Yep. I'm gone.
See you later.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.